has not yet won a race. We've had 4 different winners in those 5 races, and the man who has won 2 of them, Darren Brassfield, is the one that most of the drivers are pointing to. Now, almost everything that you can imagine that might happen in a motor race has occurred so far in 1990. There are 2 lead stories this week here in Cleveland. And the first one is the racetrack. And joining me to tell us more about that is a former Trans Am champion, Scott Pruitt.
Thanks, Larry. Basically, what we're going to see here is 2 major changes in the track. They repaved the track, which they used to call a taxiway area, which used to be turn 10 all the way down the front straight and through the pits. What happened is after they repaved, they found a big dip in the track that was causing the cars to virtually jump off the track. Ari Loyendyk and the Indy cars had a crash because of that. So they came back in and changed the course. They took out 1 and 2 and changed turn 3. So now after you come down in front of the start-finish line, it's going to go straight, clear up into turn 1, which will be a hard right going down the back straight.
Now, I realize this is a very dangerous question to ask in 1990, but what do you expect today?
If nothing else, a lot of excitement. Cleveland has always been a track that's been rough on tires. That's really going to come into play here this weekend. And surprisingly, it's always been rough on cars too. So we're going to see a lot of action and a lot of excitement today.
Well, Scott, the other lead story today are the rules, and Gary Gerald is joining us in the pits today. He'll fill us in on that situation.
Larry, the man who starts from the pole position for the 2nd time this year is Tommy Kendall. Tommy leads the Trans Am Championship point standings, even though he hasn't gotten a win thus far this year. But ironically, in this now, the 6th race of the season, he's going to be a bit further handicapped today because of a mid-season rules change that's been implemented by SCCA officials. They've determined that all of the fuel-injected V6 powered cars will now have to have a 25-pound weight added this week. That represents 2 of these lead bars that have been bolted down to the frame behind the driver here on the left rear side. Further compounding the situation, the V8 cars that haven't won in the series thus far this year get 20 pounds taken off. So we're talking about 45 pounds difference in weight. How's it going to play into this event at Cleveland? We are about to find out right now. Tommy Kendall starts from the pole. He's hoping this is the day he gets that first win despite the new rate restrictions. Larry?
Gentlemen, start your engines.
Thank you very much, Gary. As over 20,000 horsepower come to life here along the shores of Lake Erie. This is Cleveland, Ohio, the Trans Am Grand Prix along this Burke Lakefront Airport, which they've been racing here for about 10 years now, Scott, and it's rapidly become a tradition in Trans Am as well as IndyCar racing.
It certainly has, and it always adds a lot of excitement here. The one good thing about this course, one exciting thing, is for the spectators, they can see the whole place from one vantage point. Here we're on board with, I believe it was Paul Gentilosi's car. And nice outboard camera there.
Yeah, that should be some very interesting shots because you'll be able to see the direct cause and effect relationship with these feet and that left front tire.
I think this may be on board with Jack Baldwin's car. Excuse me, with Scott Sharp, and you get to see how much movement there actually is.
We'll be back with the starting grid for today's Trans Am race here in Cleveland, Ohio, right after this.
SCCA Pro Racing, taking you on the ultimate road trip.
What makes a Quaker State engine?
On the shores of Lake Erie, this is SCCA's unpredictable Trans Am Series. Today's Trans Am Championship race from the Burke Lakefront Airport in Cleveland, Ohio, is brought to you by Quaker State. The big Q is One Tough Motor Oil. By Goodyear Eagle Radials, the best-selling performance radials in the world. And by Mercury. See the new Mercurys for $19.90 at your Lincoln Mercury dealer. This is supposed to be a traditional Trans Am race, meaning we will go 100 miles, but nothing And SCCA Trans Am racing in 1990 has been traditional. You're looking at the pole setter, the yellow, white, and blue trim, number 01. That is Tommy Kendall from Glendale, California. He is our current points leader, yet to win a race this season. Irv Hare, the man that many thought was the favorite to win this championship, he starts second in his Oldsmobile. Kendall's in a Chevrolet. Starting third is Paul Genelosi, the Michigan driver, in his Oldsmobile. And Dorsey Schrader, the defending champion of Trans Am, starts on the outside in his Mustang. The third row on the inside is the winner of the recent Detroit race, Scott Sharp. That too is an Oldsmobile. And Chris Neifel in the team car to our pole sitter Tommy Kendall starts on the outside in sixth position. The fourth row is shared by Jack Baldwin, big towering Jack Baldwin from Georgia. And on the outside, Bob Sobey, a tremendous qualifying time for him this week here in Cleveland. In the ninth starting position on the inside is a former Trans Am champion. He is from Carmel Valley, California. That is Tom Gloy. It is too a Beretta. And Dick Danielson flanks his right. He's from Heartland, Wisconsin. That is an Olds Cutlass Supreme. In the 11th starting position is Darren Brassfield. He is the man who has won 2 races in the 1990 season, won the most recent race out at Portland. And Bruce Jenner. Bruce is in a brand new entry to the Trans Am ranks. This is a Cutlass Supreme. It's sponsored by Firestone. We go down the rest of the rows. We will start, Scott, 44 drivers in today's race. You can see a lot of the big names have not been able to crack the top 10 because we have such a large field. That is, of course, PL, Paul Newman, who also has another profession. But we look at this field and we see how crowded it's going to be. But, Scott, I just don't feel as though this is going to be as dangerous of a race as Detroit and Portland, the two before it, have proven to be.
Yes, that's true. Cleveland is a wide open track, which means there's just a lot of area in case you have problems. There's a lot of grass area. There's a lot of area for runoff. If you have a major problem going down a back straight, you can go straight if need be. So from that set of circumstances, it makes it a very safe track. But it always seems to be a track that takes its toll on cars, especially with starting all these today. Traffic's going to play a critical situation for this race, and you're really going to have to play it cautious out there.
Again, this race will go 100 miles or 42 laps around the old airport here. Now, that's longer than originally planned, longer because there has been a revision in the course. The revision came about because of new blacktop, and the new surface simply is not suitable for the speeds turned in by the Trans Am cars. They had to make the course changes, and it made it just a little shorter. Look at the point standings. Tommy Kendall with no win still sits on top. Darren Brassfield is second. Chris Neifel, Kendall's teammate, is third, followed by Robert Lapalainen and Jim Durhog without a win. But look how close he is to the top of the point standings. But more important in Trans Am racing are the manufacturer standings. And this season looks like it's going to be an all-out war. Oldsmobile leads, Chevrolet is second, and Ford, a perennial winner in the standings, is currently only third with 23 points. The field rumbles off of turn number 8. They're looking at a very quick flick right, left. That's turn 9-10 complex, and then they will startle across the start-finish line looking for the green flag. You're looking at Irv Hare there on the outside of the first row, the white number 15. The green flag is out, and 42 cars fire down the front straightaway. It's a changed, revised course here at Cleveland. There used to be a small little chicane right up the start-finish line. Moving to the inside in that bright red Oldsmobile, that is Paul Genelosi. Genelosi is trying to get away with the lead as they traverse the first turn. We've had a spin in the back of the pack. That appears to be Paul Newman involved. And the yellow car is Les Lindley. There are at least 3 cars. The white car is the number 29 of Ed Hinchcliffe. Meanwhile, the leaders are getting through turns 1, 2, 3, and 4 in fine fashion. But in the back of the field, we've got some carnage left over.
That's Lynn St. James sitting off on the course on the inside, and doesn't look like she's going to be able to get it going again. So
Scott Sharp is... his team is involved in an incident at the start of a Trans Am race for the second time in as many races, although this time it was not Scott, it was Paul Newman.
Well, with all these cars starting the race, there's nothing when one car loses, it's going to take a good chance of taking quite a few out. Here we're looking at Tom Kendall and Paul Genelosi, who had a great move at the start, but just couldn't quite hold on to it.
The move just didn't work for him. That very first corner is an extremely sharp right-hander. Scott, it is more than 90 degrees. It's about a 110-degree corner. Now, here is a replay of what happened on the start.
Comes up the inside, and see, goes, actually Les Lindley was the first one to spin on the inside, and Paul was just collected by another car right there.
Now, I did not see exactly where Lynn got involved in this, but we have been told that Lynn is apparently out for the day. This is from atop the main grandstand. You can see it's already begun to develop there right in the center of your screen.
Paul was just an innocent bystander there. And it looks like Lynn actually got collected as she got off the turn, just as you saw her slip away on the right side of the screen.
Somehow Les Lindley in that yellow number 8 gathered that back up and got out on course, and Lindley was motoring around at a slower speed than racing, but at least he's still in the event.
Tommy Kendall looks like he's pulling out a little bit of a lead on Paul, and Herb Hare is right there on the tracks of Paul, and it looks like it's shaping up into a good race. We have to remember this is going to be a tough race on tires.
Yeah, you have to remember this is going to be a tough race on tires. And also, as I watch this Tommy Kendall lead, Scott, I think, yeah, this is what was going on in Detroit as the number 39 car comes to a stop out on course. That is Craig Schaefer. Craig is a fairly frequent competitor. You can see how close we are to the shores of Lake Erie, and Craig has pulled off the course. That is actually one of the taxiways that is off of the back straightaway. Anyway, back to the story as I see Kendall leading. There's Gentilossi leaking to the inside again. This time it looks like he may have enough room to make the pass. Kendall gives him a great deal of room.
Yeah, really a lot of room. And it looks like Paul just slipped right on by with the Budweiser car. And again, he left a little bit too much room. Paul couldn't get enough speed coming off there, and Tommy was able just to slip right up underneath him.
Because the corner is so unusual and they're going into a turn number 3 right there, because the first turn is so unusual, that may happen a number of times today. A driver leading another one will take his normal line because there's so much room. The other one behind may be able to pass, but just temporarily.
That's exactly what happens. There's so much room out there that you can go 3, 4, 5 abreast and add for a lot of excitement. Here we're on board with Paul chasing down Tommy, and you can kind of see what's going on. You can get a feel for the track, and the turns are coming onto the new pavement, which they did up through turn 8, coming up down the back straight.
This is one of 3 straightaways. We call it the back stretch because it's near the end of the course, but this is actually the 3rd straightaway on this 2.37 mile course. You make this quick little left right flip, then back onto the 2nd of the 3 straightaways. You cross the start finish line, and that's completing 1 lap at Cleveland. We'll be back after this.
The clock is ticking. Time is running out.
The championship at Cleveland, Ohio has finished in the top 7 4 times in the 5 races this year, but the most recent race at Portland, well, piece by piece, the rest of the competitors took that race car apart. He ended up finishing 21st, looking more like a modified than a Trans Am car.
That was a tough race for Tommy. Got hit in the rear, got hit in the front, and just kind of hung on to finish out.
Scott, we're still early on here, but the interesting thing is how close the rest of the field is. You get the feeling that everybody up front is pacing themselves because Kendall is not leaving anyone in the distance, and Gentilossi continues to stay close. Herb Hare, who started in the front row, is right there. Dorsey Schrader is close. Scott Sharp is close. Baldwin is close. Everybody's playing a waiting game.
Well, usually what happens in a Trans Am race is you want to go out there, you push real hard for the first, let's say, 10 laps, 5 to 10 laps. And then you get to a point where things really settle down and you get yourself in a pace. You know you have to conserve the tires. You know you have to conserve the car for the race at the end. Because a lot of it is just getting to the end to race for the checkered flag.
Well, we're having our first activity down in the pits, and when you pit during a Trans Am race like this, it means your chances of winning are gone. That's Rick Dittman, and Gary is standing by.
Well, we've got Rick Dittman down here with a problem. They're not sure just what it is. He's the first man to enter the pits, and of course you enter the pits here and you're in trouble. They may have disconnected a spark plug wire. They fire it up, now shut it back down. Looks like it's going to be a long stop for Dickman. We'll go back up to Larry Newberg.
Thanks, Gary. Well, there once again is the view that Paul Gentilossi would have if he were leaning out the left-hand side of his car. No, he's very close to Tommy Kendall as they make that 120-degree right-hander there in turn number 1. You saw Kendall get on the brakes so hard that he was breaking tires.
What you see is as Tommy turned into the turn, it lightened up the inside tire, inside front. He had a chance to lock it just a little bit. That's a problem with some of the pavement changes here at Cleveland, and those are some of the things you have to be conscious of, because if you start flat spotting those tires, you're going to have a tough time controlling that car.
Turn number 5 coming up at the left-hander. This is like a large rectangle that they go around at the east end of the straightaway. There's the right-hander on the top end of that rectangle. We're turning east. Now we're turning back south. Turn number 7. Turn number 8 is another right-hander, and then you are on that long back straightaway, which ironically runs actually with the front stretch, but it is separated by a little bit of a chicane, and so we call it the back stretch.
This is a neat shot from on board Paul's car, and I'm just curious how long that camera's going to last there.
It makes you wonder exactly where it is. I did not have a chance to see the placement of that camera. I'm sure that it's well protected, but you're right. The way Trans Am racing has been going the last month, looks to be in a very vulnerable spot.
It certainly does. I had a chance to look at that before the races started. It's just on a jacking post that they have out there in case they have to jack the car to change tires. And I don't know how long it's going to last.
That yellow, blue, and white number 3, that is, again, the teammate to Tommy Kendall, who is leading this race. That is Chris Neifel. Chris is from Lake Forest, Illinois, along with Tommy Kendall, the twin towers, if you will, of Trans Am racing. Both of them are in the vicinity of 6'5" to 6'6". The cars are specially built to accommodate them, but it really works to each of their advantages as well as the teams, because the two of them both are so tall.
They're both so tall, so they can set up the cars virtually almost the same. People I think don't realize how critical weight is in the car. So when you have a short driver or a tall driver, it moves the driver around enough in the car where their weight becomes critical. Now they're in a situation where they can set up the cars pretty much identical. So in case they did have a problem, they could have a third car where either one could jump in.
And Chris Neifel appears to be, at least in conversation with all the drivers, Scott, this weekend here at Cleveland, the one man in this field who most senses the pressure, the need for a win.
Here we're on board with Scott Sharp. It's really interesting to see shifting without the clutch. There's no need to use the clutch with these transmissions except on a starter when you come in for a pit stop. Scott. On the brakes, heel and toe, across the top. Back on the throttle.
It certainly is living proof that there's so much more to motor racing than just steering the car.
There certainly is. You can see some of the G-forces as his leg gets pulled clear over in front of the camera. That's just going around a turn, and the loading pulling you around inside the car.
It's a very fascinating shot because you can see what Scott is doing in terms of steering that car, but how much work is going on below his waist. And Scott, I am sure that it probably is very surprising to a lot of viewers that there is no clutch work. Now, you just explained that it's not necessary, but still, we're all brought up and taught when you use the clutch, but racers don't.
Here goes Chris Neifel up the inside of Scott Sharp, too. So it looks like Chris may be making his challenge. Maybe slipping his way up to the front.
Scott Sharp is just 22 years of age, and that win at Detroit was one of those huge surprises in Trans Am in 1990 that we talked about earlier. He was running that race comfortably in 7th or 8th position, and then with just 10 laps to go at Detroit, all blank broke loose, and all of a sudden Scott Sharp found himself in the lead. Did not fare quite as well in the most recent race at Portland when he crashed at the very start of the race, even before they went all the way around the very first corner. You're watching Chris Neifel, and as Scott Pruitt mentioned, perhaps he is making his lead. Right now, the leaderboard shows us Kendall, Genelosi, and Herb Hare. In the state of Ohio and the residents of northern Ohio have done a lot of work in the last 2 decades, really, to clean up the shores of this lake. Back in the late 1950s and early 1960s, the environment around here, the environmentalists weren't too pleased with what was going on, but a lot of work has been done to reverse that trend. There is Jack Baldwin in the green, two-tone green and white, number 28. That's a Chevrolet. Baldwin is a man who has a lot of experience in road racing, and this year he made the commitment to run Trans Am. I think he probably would have hoped for a little more success, but this is a tough league.
I'll tell you what, Jack is a real tough competitor, and he's not going to give up an inch. Right behind him, you see Darren Brasfield in the Neolife car, and they work hard. I mean, they are hard chargers, and they're not going to give up an inch. And spending as much time driving with Jack and around Jack, especially running for the championship in '86, there was a lot of paint sharing that we went on there.
yeah, there was, and some of it wasn't, shall we say, the most polite in the world, but it all came out equal, I guess, in the end, didn't it?
Lap traffic beginning to be a situation here. You see Chris Neifel working his way up around there. And that's really going to play a critical situation. We have 42 cars that started this race. That's going to be a lot of passing.
Jerry Simmons in the blue number 76 Corvette is the man that the leaders are first approaching. As they approach the lap traffic, there is Tommy Kendall. He has continued to lead. A few moments ago, we also saw Darren Brasfield. Now, remember, Darren has won 2 of the last 4 races, and Scott, I personally am surprised to see Brasfield running back that far. But everybody up front, with a couple of notable exceptions, seemed to escape the first couple of laps, and all the predictable potential winners are still on the track. The black number 98 is Floridian Phil Curran, who is right now among the leaders. And there you see him right behind Gentilossi. He's letting Hare go by on the inside. Still running fairly quick. There's some horsepower in that car, but Curran started the race in the back and having a hard time keeping up. Incidentally, recall that Paul Newman was involved in that first lap crash. He started the race in 16th and dropped all the way back to 37th position as a result of that first lap altercation. He's moved back up to 23rd. So in just a few laps, Paul Newman has almost made up all the ground that he lost in that first lap shunt. There's Les Lindley in the pits, and Gary is standing by.
Yes, indeed. Les Lindley comes in dead stick, and they immediately go to work up front. They're going to pull the top off. You hear a backfire and a concussion that comes out the pipes just about 8 feet from us here that gets everybody's attention. Lindley started back in the pack. As I recall, I think it was a 15th place start, and as you chronicled, he had difficulty on that first lap. His best finish this year, 6th at Phoenix. Not going to be able to duplicate that today, but right now his concern and the concern of the crew is try to get this car back out here so he can get some more laps at Cleveland. Larry?
50-year-old Les Lindley, the best finish he's ever had in Trans Am was second, and he's done that 3 times. Almost won a couple of races in 1989, but luck was just not with him. After 10 laps, Tommy Kendall, our pole setter, continues to lead the race. Running in 4th is Darcy Schrader. Chris Neifel is 5th, and Scott Sharp is currently being shown in 6th. Now here's a rundown on the rest of the top contenders here at Cleveland. We are only about 1/4 of the way through the race, and we kind of speculate that everybody is riding about where they want to be. And even though Kendall has led since the drop of the green flag, he really hasn't shaken all the other top contenders. We still have over 30 cars on the lead lap. See, back in 19th, 20th, and 20th position, Les Lindley, who just pitted, Richard Valentine, Jim Durhag, who today, Durhag, is competing in his 100th Trans Am SCCA race in his career. 60 times he has finished in the top 10. There you see Paul Newman. As we mentioned to you, he had that problem on lap number 1. He is working his way back through the field. But we will be back here in Cleveland for another segment of this exciting Trans Am race. And remember what has happened the last 2 races. Everything has been totally unpredictable. So look smooth now, but don't go away.
The world's fastest and most exotic Mercedes-Benz comes on Goodyear Eagle radials, and only on Goodyear Eagle radials. Why? Because the engineers at Mercedes-Benz want it that way. And they're another reason why we say the best tires in the world have Goodyear written all over them.
And Tom Kendall continues to lead, and Gary Gerald can fill us in a little more about turn 1 here at Cleveland today.
Well, certainly one of the disappointed veterans is Les Lindley, who had a problem on that first lap in the first turn, and you can see some damage over his shoulder of the car. We'll get to that in a second. Les, what happened from your standpoint in the midst of all that traffic, starting almost in the middle of the field?
Well, I talked to Lynn and told Lynn, I said, I'm going to leave some room and don't hit me in the back. And I guess Paul again had brain fade and hit her and spun her around and smacked me in the back. This is crazy. I mean, people should use their heads. They can't win it in the first corner. It's a long race, and it's crazy. I mean, they have brain fade.
In the black 99, that's Mark Peelsticker who spun. The new slippery surface, obviously a problem even for those off of the leader's pace. Tommy Kendall is 3.68 seconds ahead of Gentilossi, whom you're riding with right now. You're looking out the left-hand door, the driver's door, looking at the left front. Streaming along the 3rd straightaway, you're going to see a quick right-left flick, and right after the left-hander backwards. We're only about 50 yards now from the start-finish line. There's the flagman off on the left.
This is where they used to, right here, they used to make a left-right combination. Now they go straight all the way up into turn 1.
Boy, you can just see how heavy the traffic is. I mean, the rest of the field is really making our leaders work for their keep today. That's Richard Valentine right now that Gentilossi is trying to get around, and Richard, watching the rearview mirrors just a little too much, drives off course temporarily.
Paul Gentilossi in the Budweiser car. You can see how he moves the car around depending where he needs to be for the situation, for the traffic. Sometimes there's so much room out there at Cleveland. It's tough to find that point of entry, and actually you can enter a turn from a number of different spots.
Paul Genelosi has had a couple of third-place finishes this year and also a fourth-place finish. So if he were able to stay where he is right now, this would be his best tally of 1990.
Take a look at Tommy Kendall up front, really stretching out his lead now. He's in a situation, again, he's conserving tires, conserving the car, really taking care of things.
And we ask him, how does he look at the remainder of the season, given the fact that he's still the points leader, but continues to look hard after win number 1? Well, we'll go to that in just a second. There is Tom Gloy, a former Trans Am champion who's running selected races on the Trans Am Trail this season. He is stopped out by the lake. That is just outside of the second of the 2 long straightaways on this course. This is Gloy's third race of the season. It was a bit of a surprise, frankly, that he came back and entered some Trans Am races in 1990, but there he is. He's back, and he's having a day that's ending a little sooner than what he had hoped for it to do. Gloy was running in 9th place. As you see the leaderboard, Tom Kendall continues to lead. Genelosi is second. Irv Hare is third. Defending champ Dorsey Schrader's fourth, and Chris Neifel fifth. University of California, Los Angeles, also known as UCLA, continues to lead this race. Now, we did talk to him earlier and ask him, how does he view the rest of this season? Tom Kendall has had a very unusual year. I mean, it's a year that's cost this team a lot of money in fenders, but he's also racked up a lot of points.
The way I look at it, I guess, you know, it's like we're starting from ground zero right now. It's like the season's beginning right now. We have 10 races left, and if you look at it that way, I've got a 7-point head start on everybody. So from that standpoint, you know, it's a clean slate from here on out, and there's 10 races left. I'm going for 10 victories.
Tommy Kendall is averaging 110 miles an hour in this race, so we have gone green flag all the way since the start. The qualifying speed, the pole speed that Kendall himself turned in was better than 115 miles an hour, so he has maintained a pretty fast pace here under racing conditions. Now, Lyn St. James was another one involved in that first lap altercation, and Gary, her version.
Well, the middle of the field was a bad place to be at the start of this race. Lyn St. James has made her way from the infield back into the pits. What happened, or what are you aware of that may have happened on that start?
I wish I could see the tape, actually, to know for sure, but you know, really knew that it was going to be a pretty messy deal getting through there. I'm not used to starting that far back, but really went in for a conservative start and got on the brakes, got on the binders, and it was like the whole field came to a stop. I got boxed in and unfortunately got into the back of Lindley. That's all I know, is that I was on the on the brakes, absolutely hammering them and trying to stop the car as best I could. Got boxed in and ended up in the back of Lindley. So. And
unfortunately, everybody else that was involved was able to get restarted or keep going. You were the only one who couldn't get restarted.
Yeah, the damage to the Mustang isn't too bad, but unfortunately it did break the radiator and all the water came out, and the front nose is pretty bad, so I couldn't continue. But fortunately, there's not a lot of structural damage, so we'll be ready for the next race. But it's just still really disappointing because we thought we were going to do well here. It's my hometown, my home track, and I would have liked to have done well. But you got to just put it behind you and get on ready for the next one.
Okay, thanks, Lyn. Let's go back to Larry.
Well, Gary, Lyn started the race in 18th position, and from a real quick look at the tapes, she was side by side with Paul Newman when Lindley, for some unknown reason, and at this point we can't make a call on it, got out of shape in front of the two of them, and whether or not he was bumped from behind or whatever, at this point we do not know. There is the second running Paul Genelosi in the bright red number 7, and Tom Kendall, although earlier it looked like that Genelosi and Irv Hare, who is following him from behind, were pretty much keeping up with Kendall. He's got a little bit of a lead on them now, Scott.
A little bit of a lead. I've been watching for the last few laps, and it looks like they've been moving him back up. I mean, actually catching back up to Tommy. So it's just a matter of you know, them getting caught up in traffic.
The halfway point is coming up, and we're going to take a look at our race summary here at Cleveland. After 20 laps, the race leader was Tom Kendall. He had led all 20 laps. We had had no caution flags, a big change from the last 2 races. 16 cars, however, remained on the lead lap, and Kendall has bumped up the race average speed to 111.38 miles per hour. So he is going just a little faster, or at least he's still running very consistently. After 20 laps, cars out of the race were the man from Disneyland, from Anaheim, California, Les Lindley. Rick Dittman was out. Craig Schaefer had retired on the backstretch. Lyn St. James in that first lap crash, and former champion Tom Gloy. 5 cars retiring from the event up to this point. We have half of the race to go. And as we mentioned at the top of the show, Scott, these races in 1990 truly have been anybody's race. And with 16 of them on the lead lap, I think we got a similar situation again today.
We certainly do, and it's really going to be interesting to see what happens if there may be a caution flag. Then we get all these cars bunched up together.
Oh, Chris Neifel is spun. Chris Neifel, who was running solidly in the top 5. I saw no other cars around him. He looked like he did that all by himself. Coming out of turn number 8, that's that rectangle at the east end of the racetrack, leading onto the back straightaway.
He's going again, but you're right. It was hard to make out exactly what happened. It looked like it may have just got away from him.
There is Tom Kendall. He continues to lead. He's running very comfortably, but who knows how this one will end. This is, after all, Trans Am. Incidentally, once played professional football, continues to lead the race. Paul Genelosi is in second, and Herb Hare is in third. The first 3 have been that way since the drop of the green flag. There's a good look.
That was close with that back marker. He got a little sideways just to keep from missing him. So he may be playing a little aggressive there. That was a little bit closer than I'd like to see.
Working his way around Phil Kern. You can see in the background the red car, third one in line there. That is Genelosi. And the 5th car in line, now third on your camera, on your TV monitor, that is Herb Hare. So second, third continue to stalk here at Cleveland.
Herb Hare, and right behind him was Dorsey Schrader, so he's not out of the hunt at all for sure. And I've been watching Darren Bransfield. It looks like he may be actually slipping up there too.
We're working on lap number 28. We're going to go 42 laps here at Cleveland. There is Herb Hare. Herb and his father Rudy put together this race team. They actually started running dirt ovals. His first race was a 1/5 mile dirt oval in his native state of Illinois. And they worked their way up through oval racing, ran some USAC, and decided they wanted to go road racing. And from the time that Herb made the switch from dirt track racing to road racing, he really has been a success. Now there's Dorsey Schrader. Interesting story, because at least at the beginning of the season, his team, the Jack Roush team, decided not to go after the championship in SCCA Trans Am with Dorsey. But Dorsey told us surprisingly this weekend, because no one has asserted themselves in the points, if he has a couple of good finishes, they may decide here at midstream, hey, I'm going to go after the championship.
That's a long shot there.
It sure is.
He's betting on it. A lot of people are going to have problems. And what's probably going to happen is a situation that Kendall's team's going to get it together. Paul Gentilosi's team with Darren, and they're going to keep it up a strong spearhead towards championship. That'd be a hard, long call for me.
Right now, the first and second place cars are 2 drivers that have never won a Trans Am race. Dorsey Schrader, his best finish this year was 25th. He has yet to crack the top 25 in Trans Am this year. He is the defending champion. He has 6 career wins, and they all came last year right after Jack Roush hired him to drive this Trans Am car, and he really took the Trans Am series by storm in 1989. There was no question he was the main man last year. The main man today has been the main man many times this season, Tommy Kendall, but as we have told you repeatedly, he has not won a race. Incidentally, Paul Genelosi, second place on course, has moved within 1.3 seconds of Kendall, and it even looks closer now. It's visible. There you can see on the far left-hand side of your screen, Genelosi. What an unusual line.
Looks like coming off there, May thinks that there may be a little bit better grip coming off there. There is a number of places to come off. Sometimes real close to the wall it gets pretty slippery, so he may be looking for a line with maybe a little bit more advantage.
You're looking at the man right now who is only 13 points out of first place in points. This is Shasta, Minnesota's Jim Durhog, right now running 18th on the course. Today he celebrates his centennial. This is his 100th career Trans Am start. 60 times he has finished in the top 10. So you say, yeah, but he's only running 18th today. That's not uncommon. Frequently he runs well outside of the top 10 or top 15, but at the end of the race, Durhog is always there.
That's what we talked about earlier. With this different point system, you have to be there. Consistency is the name of the game, and Durhog's been there and showed that he's right up there towards the runner going for the championship.
Durhog has finished in the top 10 every race. His best finish, high water mark, a 5th, the last race at Portland. You're watching out the rear deck lid of Jim Durhog.
Going up into turn 1, very hard right-hander. pavement change, hard on the throttle. It's easy for the car to get away from here. A lot of wheel spin if you're not careful as you head down the back straight. And as you can see how much room there is going up into turn 2. I mean, it's real tough to pick out the apex for turn 3.
We're on the main runway, and you heard Scott call that the backstretch. It's actually the first of 2 back straightaways, and we call that other long section as the cars make the bend around the east end of the racetrack. We call that a backstretch because you can't really call it a front straightaway because it is not in front of the start-finish line and the pits. There's Tom Kendall. We're back up front. We'll see if Gentilozzi has been able to close the gap even more. Remember that he had crept to underneath 1.5 second difference between himself and Tommy Kendall in car number 01. Well, everyone knows, of course, that all of motor racing is becoming more and more technological every year. But Trans Am always seems to be one of the pace setters in that trend. And Gary Gerald took a look at these Chevy Berettas down in the pits this weekend and found some very interesting facts about the new Berettas. Tom Kendall continues to lead, and of course his teammate Chris Neifel is also in the top 5.
Without question, Trans Am racing is becoming increasingly sophisticated in recent years, but if you were to look inside the cockpit of points leader Tommy Kendall or the Chevy Beretta of his teammate Chris Neifel, you might not think so, because where most drivers are monitoring 5 or 6 gauges on their dash, these drivers have just 2 gauges that attract their attention. There is, of course, the tach over here, and then there's this particular gauge. It's part of the electronic system of the Gen 3 system. It monitors 7 different functions, things like oil pressure, oil temperature, water temperature, the ambient air temperature that relates to their fuel injection system. Now, if something starts to go wrong or is against the norm, this flashes until it gets the driver's attention. He then comes to this little dial over here, and by making changes on this dial, he can change microchips in the computer system, hopefully correcting the problem. If he can correct the problem, he prevents a pit stop. And of course, in Trans Am racing, if you have to make a pit stop, your chances of winning are virtually right out the window.
Well, Gary, Chris has not made a pit stop today, but he has had a minor detour. There was a spin at the far eastern end of this racetrack, and it appears at this point that without a yellow flag, he will not be a contestant for victory here at Cleveland in Trans Am race today. Chris Neifel runs now in 7th position in that ICI Olivetti Beretta in car number 3. Chris Neifel still looking for win number 1 like his teammate Tommy Kendall, but right now Tommy Kendall is in an excellent position to turn that around. The Trans Am race of the Cleveland Grand Prix weekend, Tommy Kendall cannot possibly lose this one. Gary Gerald, you're standing by with Dan Binks, crew chief. What do you think?
Well, the man who is calling the shots, anxious. I know you haven't gotten the first win this year, Dan, but right now you're inching closer to it. Any word from Tommy, and how's the race progressing from your standpoint?
The only thing that's happening right now is a little bit of traffic's falling into play, but I'm not counting my chickens before they hatch. It's not over yet.
What are your primary concerns in the final laps?
Hopefully Gentilozzi doesn't catch us.
All right, that just puts it on the line. We'll wait and see along with the crew. Gentilozzi challenging. Kendall has the lead. Larry?
Oh, Gary, you and Dan really have brought up the point of the moment. That is, you can see that Tom is in heavy traffic, and it has cost him some track space. Gentilozzi is as close now as he has been the last 3 laps, Scott.
Paul's been working hard with the Budweiser car, staying there and working his way towards the front. And this is the time when he has to make his move. He has to start pushing, start taking those chances in traffic, start making those moves that can move him up to Tommy.
Paul Gentilozzi, even though Gentilozzi has the years in terms of the age on Tom Kendall, maybe Tom Kendall in this type of racing has a little bit more experience up front than Gentilozzi. Incidentally, the interval has now dropped down to 1.85 seconds, and with 5 laps to go, let's just quickly run down the top 10 so you can see if your favorite is in there. Gentilozzi 2nd, Herb Harris 3rd, Schrader is 4th, Darren Brasfield is now 5th, Scott Sharp 6th, Chris Neifel 7th, Ron Fellows, the Canadian, is 8th, Dick Danielson, a great race for him. He is 9th, and Jack Baldwin is having a good week, and he is 10th. But our attention goes up front to find out whether or not Gentilozzi can move in on race leader Tom Kendall. There they are now working their way around Jim Durhog, and Jim Durhog is apparently not having a typical race because he's still caught back up there in 18th position, which is pretty unusual for Jim. There you see the leader, Tommy Kendall, getting around.
Tommy Kendall up front. And the Beretta really showing the way here. He's really led this race all the time, and showed superiority from the start. Paul Gentilossi right behind him in the Budweiser car. Paul Gentilossi, I know a lot of people think, boy, what's this guy doing out driving? But he does a really good job. You know, he's ahead of his teammate and running second in good, strong position. He's finished in top 5 in a number of races this year.
He's always been very fast. He's had a few moments that he would probably like to have back.
I think we all have.
You know, but he really has certainly improved in 1990, and that lead has now expanded again to 3 seconds. You were mentioning about Gentilossi's finishes. 3 times this year he's been in the top 4 with 2/3 and a 4th, but Kendall now, I think he senses the kill, and I get the feeling as I watch the last few laps, he's controlling the interval.
He certainly is. Traffic had been a big portion of that interval, but Tommy's in a situation where he wants that win. I mean, he's had the monkey on his back now for a little while, and he wants to get that guy off there. So he wants to win this bad.
You just can't help but hope that this race is left in his hands, that Tommy wins or loses it, and that some gremlin doesn't jump up and grab him again.
We're on board with Paul's car again, and that camera's made it through the whole race so far.
Yes, it has.
Here we're coming on the front straight, clear down at the other end. This is the area they did all the repaving. A lot smoother than it had been. It used to be very, very rough down here. Coming up here, right-left combination right before start-finish. Pavement change right here to the old pavement. Coming up past start-finish right now. And again, this is where they used to turn off to go to the situation, the old track where they had changed this weekend.
With 3 laps to go, the next driver that they are approaching to put a lap on is Bruce Jenner, the Olympic decathlon driver. It's a white car, number 92. You can see him right there on your screen. Here comes Kendall. It's a brand new entry in Trans Am racing this weekend. You'll see the Olympic rings on the car, and the number is 92, signifying Firestone's involvement in the 1992 Olympics. So they are taking motor racing to the Olympics in 1992 and vice versa.
I think it's pretty exciting. I spent a lot of time with Bruce, and unfortunately he hasn't been driving as much as he'd like to the last few years. He just signed a 3-year contract with him, and I'm wishing him well.
Bruce is running in 13th position. There you can see Kendall. He's there on that east end rectangle again, running very smoothly today. That truly has been one of his strong suits today here at Cleveland. Kendall has been smooth. We've seen some, I wouldn't call them erratic moves from Gentilossi, but you just thought they were surprising, but none of those from Kendall. He's been smooth and predictable all day long. Now down to 2 laps to go.
Certainly looks like Tommy has this race in hand, but again, as we saw the number of races earlier, it's not over till it's over.
There is a contest heating up for 3rd position. That is Herb Hare, the white, blue, and red trim, number 15. And moving to the inside is Darren Brasfield, the man who's won 2 of these races, and I think he has them, Scott.
Again, the new area of the track, a lot of heavy braking under that area. That's for a really nice area to pass.
That was for 4th position. I forgot about Dorsey Schrader having a couple laps earlier gotten by those 2 drivers. Schrader is running 3rd, and Brasfield moves into 4th as Herb Hare loses a couple of positions here in the last 2 or 3 laps of this race. There is Kendall. The race is still in his hands. He's on the throttle. He goes through the infield section, if you will, of this course. Now looking for that straightaway. Almost to Euclid, Ohio. This is a long, long course. We've mentioned a couple of times we are on an active airport, and they have constructed a race course on this airport, and it's very long and rectangular, and it's only, perhaps a 1/5 of a mile from the front stretch to the back of the course, but it is quite long. It's almost a 2.5-mile course. Just 1 lap to go. Tommy Kendall now. Here he comes in that yellow, blue, and white trimmed number 01 Beretta, and Tommy Kendall's got it. He has to be thinking, now, this is not going to happen to me again.
I'll tell you what, there's so many things that are going through your mind as you're sitting in that car in the last lap. You have a lead pretty well in hand.
But this has got to be worse than usual. I know it happens to every race driver when they're leading, but something has jumped up and snatched it away from Kendall every time this year.
I have a pretty good idea this is going to be his race. He's ran good from the start, and just through the law of averages, this is his time.
Well, we mentioned at the top of the show, even though this series has been very predictable, we just had the feeling that if any racetrack was conducive to a smooth Trans Am race, it was here in Cleveland.
It certainly showed that way from the start. We just had a little incident there, and since then, virtually incident-free.
Tommy Kendall now making the final corners. We're up in turn 6, 7, and 8. He's got a straightaway and then 2 more turns to come home victor for the first time in 1990 in Trans Am racing. That's Dick Danielson right in front of him. Danielson pulls to the left-hand side of the road. Tommy scoots underneath. He's got a right-hander, a left-hander. Here comes Gentilozzi, but there's not enough time to catch him. Kendall is finally going to win in SCCA Trans Am in 1990. He flashes across the start-finish line. He's got to be smiling. He's got to be clapping in the cockpit as he wins by almost 2 seconds.
A happy man. I mean, I'll tell you, it had been him so close before, and what a great way to do it. Qualify first, lead from the start, virtually uncontested all day long, except for a little bit with Paul, but I wish him well. What a great race.
Tommy Kendall, the winner in Cleveland.
It's one of the most...
This has been the series that cannot be predicted. The Trans Am Championship race today from the Burke Lakefront Airport in Cleveland, Ohio, along the shores of Lake Erie. Today's race has been brought to you by Ford Motorcraft. Get the peace of mind by doing it right with the right parts. Motorcraft quality parts. By Busch Beer, the beer with a taste as smooth as its name. And by Quaker State, the big Q is One Tough motor oil. 23-year-old Tommy Kendall has won a lot of races in his career, but today may have been the most important. Here's Gary.
Well, let's find out. Is this the most important race that Tommy Kendall has ever won in your career?
I'll tell you, you can add all the other ones up together and it doesn't equal this one. I was as happy as I've ever been on that cool-off lap. I was screaming. No one could hear me, but I was screaming as loud as I could.
And the victory dance on the roof of the car reminds us of Willie T. Ribbs, who used to do that in Trans Am action.
Well, I saw Willie around earlier. I hope he doesn't think I'm infringing on the Willie shuffle, but I couldn't help myself. This Olivetti Beretta ICI car has been outstanding all year long, and it's just been little things that have kept us from it. And like I told Larry earlier, you know, we weren't going to change our strategy. We were just going to stick to the basics and really work hard on that, and the wins would come, and they sure did.
Paul Gentilozzi was right there all day long. He really didn't give you much breathing room. You get 3 seconds, then he'd cut it back to 1.5 seconds. You had to know he was right there.
Oh, yeah, they were giving me the split every lap in tenths of a second. You know, if I could pull out a tenth, I was happy. So, like I said, a comfortable lead was 3.8 seconds, and that's hardly comfortable. You hiccup, and he'd be by you.
We talked earlier about you had a little added restriction with the extra weight today. Did that play any role at all in your mind?
Yeah, I drove it for everything it was worth. I don't think there's anything else left in these tires. They're about all the way down, and you know, it was hard to believe they added weight before we'd even won a race, but maybe they just had a feeling, maybe they knew something we didn't, that we were going to win this one.
Well, the points leader is now a winner in Trans Am competition. Congratulations to Tommy Kendall. Larry?
Well, a very deserving and, needless to say, an extremely joyous winner. The new rules changes seemingly having no effect at slowing down the Berettas, although the field remained very competitive again. As you heard him say, he never shook Gentilozzi all day long. He held on for second. Brassfield comes home in third. He's having a good season. Dorsey Schrader fourth. Probably not enough for Dorsey at this point in the season. And Irv Hare finally finishes in fifth position. 6th through 10th, Sharp, Neifel, Fellows, Baldwin, and Max Jones. Scott, your impressions?
I thought it was a pretty interesting race. It was real nice to see Tommy come home to victor here. I know it was so close for him in the last few races, and unfortunately taken out like he was at Portland. So that was real nice for him, as well as we've seen a lot of excitement. The Manufacturers Championship is really starting to wind its way to being quite the battle. We have Chevrolet, Oldsmobile, and Ford kind of back there in the bleachers, but maybe they can get it together.
Jack Roush's team has dominated this series, but the Oldsmobile Rocket Sports team is coming on. They may be the team of the 1990s, at least the early 1990s, because now Brassfield as well as Gentilozzi has each shown some strength.
They certainly have, and what a great weekend.
From Cleveland, Ohio, young Tommy Kendall has finally turned the trick and won a Trans Am race. He wins for the first time in his career. So long from Cleveland.
Where's Tom?